Purim is around the corner. And Purim there's so much to talk about Purim. You know, the Megillah, the meaning of the different mitzvahs. There's a great deal to cover. But tonight, I want to actually deal with the logistics of Purim. Purim for us is about 30 hours, 36 hours. If you include Tanis Esther, it's 2 days. The fast of Esther, it's 2 days. But in it is packed a great number of things that are mitzvahs that are appropriate to do on Purim. So it took me many years after I became observant not to be caught off guard. Oh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that?
Sure.
So I've made a little list for us, and then as simply as I can, we'll talk about each item. We may finish it tonight, we may finish it in our next meeting, okay? So, and I'm going to use Guidelines, which is a really handy book for many holidays and other things, and I'm going to use one for Purim tonight as a reference guide. It's very good and simple for that. Can you close the door outside because it's getting noisy? So prior to Purim and a month later Pesach are the 4 Parshiot that are said. These are, along with the weekly reading, is a special maftir and a special haftorah that is said. And those 4 parshas, it's on Shabbos, and those 4 parshas, we've had one already, Shkolim, which is about the half shekel, right? This week we're going to have Parsha Zachor. Zachor means to remember, right? We'll talk about what we're going to remember in a second. Then comes Parsha Para a few weeks later. And just before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the month of Pesach, is Parsha HaChodesh. So, Parsha Zachor, which comes up this weekend, is to remember the war with Amalek. That we should remember that it is part of our responsibility to destroy Amalek, the nation of Amalek. There is a conflict that has existed since the beginning of Amalek with us. Amalek's goal has been to destroy God's word in this world by destroying the messenger, which is us. And King Shaul tried to do it and did not succeed, which we'll talk about in a second. And of course, Amalek plays a very, very big role in Purim, because the antagonist of the story, Haman, is called Haman Agagite. Haman was a great-great-great-grandson of Agag. Agag was the name of all Amaleki kings. So just as the name of all Egyptian kings was Paro, so the names of the kings of Amalek were Agag. King Shaul, in his battle with Amalek, destroyed virtually the whole nation, but spared the king.
The Amalek, King
Agag.
Shaul is
actually, Agag,
okay.
The king Agag.
Okay.
Spared the king Agag.
King Shaul is the Israelite. That's the Israelite.
That's right.
Okay.
From the tribe of Benjamin.
Okay.
Which is the same tribe, I should add, as Mordechai comes from. Agag was king of Amalek. Shaul went to battle against him. He was told to destroy Amalek completely. All the men, all the animals, everything. He decided not to. And he explained to Samuel, the prophet, who had commanded him to do this on God's behalf, I spared the animals because we want to bring them as a sacrifice to God. And I spared the king. It seemed to Saul the right thing to do. Shmuel says, because of this, the crown will be torn from you. Right? God only asks that you do exactly what he tells you. Right? Don't make those kind of judgments as to how you can improve on the plan. And it's a very tragic moment. And then Samuel says, have Agag brought to me, and he destroys him with a sword in front of Shaul. What is left out of the story, which we know is in that one night that he should have been killed in the battlefield, and he was held prisoner, was a night in which a woman came to him and became pregnant, and the descendant of that union was Haman.
Wow.
Amalek has another meaning for us, and that is Amalek's effectiveness to us, not just to do battle and to kill us, but is to create doubt in our world. Doubt in that God has a plan for the world. Doubt that there is significance to the events that happen in the world. Amalek is somebody who believes there's a lot of coincidence going on, which takes out your responsibility for behavior, because there is no sense of reward for behaving appropriately and punishment for not, because everything just kind of happens in the world of Amalek. So conscience is not part of the world of Amalek. And we've seen in history situations very often where conscience is removed from certain groups of people and they behave in an atrocious manner, is the kindest way I can say it. The Jews, on the other hand, have often been described as the conscience of the world. We make people sometimes very uncomfortable by our presence because of what we stand for. So Amalek is somebody who is concerned with removing the sense of responsibility to do the right thing. So this is not just an individual. It's also a state of mind. And that we should have in mind when we want to destroy Amalek, that we want to destroy the Amalek within ourselves as well. It's a very important part of this week's Parsha Zachor, is to have in mind, if you have doubts, by the way, there's nothing wrong with having doubts, questioning, and learning. That's very much part of what we do and part of Yiddishkeit. But if you scorn, if you lose the desire to find what is right, if you're cooled off, these are symptoms of the Amalek within yourself, and those things should be destroyed. The pursuit of God's truth is something that should have a passion attached to it. So that's this parsha. Then we have Parsha Para. Parsha Para is about the bull, the unique red bull that was used for purifying. He was burnt, and his ashes were sprinkled on a person who had come in contact with the dead. And through this they were purified from the tuma, the impurity of coming into contact with the dead, because that is the ultimate form of impurity in the Jewish world, is when somebody dies and their soul leaves them, there's a vacuum created. What goes into that vacuum is a kind of negativity. We don't want to have that as part of us. And most of all, you can't enter the Beis Mikdash in a state of impurity, the temple. So before Pesach, it was very important that people be purified. So Parsha Para reminds us that prior to entering the Beis Mikdash, we should go through the experience of the Para, Paraduma, the red cow. There were 9 red cows in history. The 10th one is due to be with us at the time of the 3rd Beis Mikdash, that we will be purified then, and at the time of Mashiach it should come soon. Then finally there's Parsha HaKodesh, which comes just prior to, roughly 2 weeks before Pesach. It's the beginning of the month. Now, to move from Parsha Zachor, we should jump to the day before Purim, or the day before the evening that starts Purim. That's a fast. It's considered the most lenient of all fasts, and it's a unique fast because Tanis Esther, the fast of Esther, is a fast not of the sadness of the destruction of the Beis Mikdash, but it's a fast of preparation for the war which we will win. So it's not a sad fast, although we're not eating, right? But it's purifying ourselves for a conflict that we will succeed at. And it's, of all the fasts, probably the most lenient one. That, nursing mothers, if you're not feeling well, there's many reasons. Of course, you should assume you're going to fast, but if you have a question, you should always ask your Rav, and he will tell you what's appropriate on that day. The fast begins at sunrise, just prior to sunrise, and if a person is planning to eat prior to that, they should have it in mind when they go to bed the night before, that I'm going to wake up early and eat. And it's best to finish eating any kind of mazonos or bread roughly 30 minutes before the fast starts. So it's probably around 4:45, 5 o'clock, something like that right now. You can check the calendar wherever you are. Your local calendar will tell you. And from a health point of view, it's always good to be very well hydrated going into a fast. Have a lot of water the night before or the morning of. The fast takes us through the day of preparation for Purim. At Mincha time, and people have different traditions with Mincha, what time they say it, but when we say it is a good time to give the Matzos HaShekel, the half shekel. Half shekel that we give is half of the value of a local coin. So you might, in the U.S., if there was a silver dollar, you'd be giving 50-cent pieces. Right? And let's just see for a moment what it says here about the Matzos HaShekel.
In Canada, what would you give for that?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I would say that the tuni is considered to be a coin, so the easy solution might be loonies. Right? Okay. Must one give precisely 3 half coins? It's three half coins you give. Yes, one should not give a whole coin and one half coin, nor give more than the correct amount and take change. If a person does not have the correct coins, he should obtain them from another person or from the charity box. Often they'll have them for you there, so you can buy the Matzos HaShekel, right, by putting into a basket, let's say, $5 bill, and taking out $2 that you can put in your pocket, and 3 loonies which you would put in the appropriate basket at that point. Right? There's really nothing that you have to say at the time you say it.
This is at Mincha time, not at Shacharis.
This is at Mincha usually. Some people do it before, some people do it after.
This is on the Wednesday, not the Thursday.
This is on Wednesday.
During the fast.
That's right. This week it's during the fast. That's right. Okay, so let's see if one can obtain it.
Can you not do the half shekel at Shacharis, or it's not allowed?
You could do it.
Because I will be at work.
Right. So you could do it. Yeah, you can do it.
But I'm off Thursday all day.
Yeah. It says here, at Mincha is the right time. Some perform the mitzvah before Mincha, some perform it afterwards. Right. And if you forgot to perform it, there's other times you can do it as well, right up to the end of Adar if necessary.
Oh, I see.
Should anything be said when giving the money? Nothing needs to be said, but if one wishes, one may say that this is to commemorate the giving of the half shekel. One must be careful not to say this is the half shekel, since according to some opinions, this would sanctify money and prohibit its use.
Oui.
Right? So the wording, if you want to say something, is that this is to commemorate the giving of the half shekel. And we can talk more about the significance of half shekel later. Right? So then one davens mincha, and it's a normal mincha. I should double check that at this point.
There isn't any reading of the Megillas Esther yet.
No.
That's in Marav.
That's right. Megillas Esther can't start till the night. And as you point out, there is a tradition. There's a tradition to hear the Megillah twice, once in the evening and once during the day. So we're going to review that now. So here it says, what are the mitzvahs to perform on Purim? Right? Reading the Megillah, giving gifts to the poor, sending food packages to one another, feasting and rejoicing. What are the main changes in the prayers of Purim? Right? So we say Al Nissim. You remember we said Al Nissim at Hanukkah time. It's an addition in the Shemona Esrei, and also in benching. And it's a slightly different Al Nissim. It's the beginning is the same, and then the end is about Purim instead of about Hanukkah. Tachnun and Lam Natseach, which comes with Tachnun, is not read on Purim.
That's the.
That's right. Yeah, we don't do that.
They don't do that
because Purim is the happiest day of the Jewish.
Yeah, we're not singing.
Day. It says Purim and Yom Kippur are the two happiest days of the year. Right? Yeah. We express the happiness differently in different times. So we hear the Megillah and we break the fast. It's not at this point. Some people are in costumes, some kids are sometimes in costumes, but it's not really costume time yet. Right? We begin to daven Mariv, and we daven Mariv really up until Aleinu. And then before we say Aleinu, we read the Megillah. And then we say Aleinu, and that's the end of Mariv. So the Megillah is kind of right in the middle of Mariv, actually. Right? And then we break the fast at that point. There is an opinion that the person reading the Megillah can break the fast earlier in order to have the strength to read the Megillah, but he's not required to. The traditions of reading the Megillah vary. Of course, when you read the Megillah, it's very important to hear every word. It's best to read the Megillah from a actual a Megillah itself. Open it up and read it. You'll see when the Megillah is read that it's folded in an unusual way, because as Rabbi has mentioned in the previous year, the Megillah is seen as two different things. One is as a sefer, a book, and the other is as a letter. And we fold it the way you fold the letter that you want to read, the scroll. It's not like the Torah, which is rolled from two sides. The Megillah is actually just a actual document. We take it out of it's often a wooden or silver case, right? And then we take it out and fold it this way, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then it takes a skill to be able to know how to turn it as you go when you're reading it. But it's not something that's rolled the way the Torah is rolled from one side to the other. And that it's one of the things that indicates that it's a letter for us. And a letter, as is pointed out, is a very personal document. This is a letter that Esther and Mordechai wrote for the Jewish people, but it was publicly read. And one of the points that I like to make about the Megillah is, as you're reading it, we tend to read it as a document that was written eons ago. Right? But there's two things to keep in mind of it. One is that we should know that the Megillah is written for our time, whatever time it is. For us, it's relatively easy to do it, sadly. It's really easy, because the Megillah focuses on an evil head of state of Persia, which is today Iran, who is bent on the destruction of all the Jewish people. And his plot is foiled. It's very easy for us to think about this, right? He was an Amaleki himself. Haman, that is. When we read the Megillah, it's very important to hear every word, so it takes a great deal of focus. And you'll notice that when the name Haman is read, that people want to make noises to drown out the sound of the name Haman itself. But after they're done making those sounds, the reader then will make sure to read it clearly so you hear what would otherwise have been drowned out, because you're supposed to hear every word. We have a tradition in our home that people make the noise not at every mention of the name Haman, but whenever his name and title is mentioned together. That's usually when we do it. Although sometimes children are anxious to get every opportunity they can. And you can use anything you want to drown out the noise, from your voice to keys on a chain to a tin can to a proper grogger. So that's the reading of the Megillah. And then after we read the Megillah, there's some special things said. And then, of course, the fast is broken. And that's pretty well the end of the evening, that evening. It's not a big partying evening, generally speaking. Some people, it's a very happy time. Some people celebrate, whatever, but yeah, that's it. In the morning, the Megillah is read in many cities, in Toronto, pretty well from about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, right through almost to Mincha. Usually every half hour, somewhere there's someone reading a Megillah. And if people are sick, there's often people will go to their homes or to hospitals that they should hear Megillah and read it for them. It's a big mitzvah to hear Megillah, and it's a kindness to be the one reading it. It's very important. There are many rules about how it's done. We won't go into that because really we're talking about schedule today. So you can fit in where you will hear the Megillah in your day. Generally speaking, men go to Shacharis, and then again before Aleinu is said, the Megillah is read, and they have fulfilled their mitzvah. Women.
Shacharis they'll read?
Yeah, Shacharis is the other reading. Sometimes that's very difficult for ladies because they're very busy with other mitzvahs of Purim at that point, and they have to try and find some time during the day to hear the reading. Sometimes they go with their families to Shacharis as well. But it's very important, again, to hear the Megillah, every word of it. So if you're in a shul, it really is a good time to try and be as close to the reader as possible. Because unlike normal times where, you're doing your own Shemona Esrei and your own Shema and there's no requirement to hear somebody else's Shema, you're going to do it yourself. In this case, there is. So if you're sitting far away and there's a lot of noise and you don't hear the Megillah, it's a real question as to whether you've fulfilled the mitzvah. So it's good to make sure you're close to a Megillah reading or in a place that's quiet, and the reading is very clear. So have that in mind. In our case, we daven in the morning, my son and I, and then he reads Megillah at our home, probably at 10 o'clock in the morning. He'll read Megillah at night, probably around 7 o'clock at night, the night before. So once you have completed the second Megillah reading, you've completed that mitzvah of hearing the Megillah the night and the morning. And then events start to happen quite quickly. People will be coming to your home to bring you shalach manot. Shalach manot is gifts of food. It's a gift. The official requirement is it's a gift of two kinds of prepared foods. So you don't give people CDs and apples. Sometimes people like to give people two different brachas. Just as an opportunity to say two brachas. Right? So a person might give someone fruit and challah, right? Or some wine and something, but it has to be something that can be eaten. Right? Children are expecting to have a lot of junk food at this time. This is a painful thing for mothers, and it should be controlled. It doesn't mean the child can't enjoy it, but the child can make themselves very sick. So the child should eat properly and should really ration this food so that he doesn't make himself sick or get so high in sugar that he doesn't really get to enjoy the rest of the day. So people coming to your house and bringing things, you also have a requirement to bring things to other people. The requirement is that you deliver 2 shalach manot, or 1 shalach manot to 2 different people. So you one to this person, one to that person, right? And it can be as elaborate as you want or as simple as you want. And it can, as long as it has 2 separate pieces of food in it that are prepared. You can't give, it's not appropriate to give somebody, say, a uncooked roast. Right? It's a nice gift, uncooked roast, but they can't eat it, right? So you want to give the idea of something you can eat. Right? Also coming to your door on this day are people who are collecting. Right? The most important thing is that people are collecting for the poor, as opposed to for institutions. Institutions, of course, have merit, right? But the matanos levoyim, the gifts to the poor, are specifically a mitzvah that we have. And you should give with an open hand on this day. This is the one day of the year where it's really not appropriate to question, even if you say, gee, I wonder if that guy's really appropriate. And some days you might say, I want to, know more about this before I write a check, before I give. On this day, it's appropriate to try to give. Right? And you should prepare in advance to do that, depending on how wealthy or how careful you have to be with money, that you have either checks or coupons or cash on hand, and that you have it in your mind in such a way that you can give it to a person without exposing all of your money to make them feel uncomfortable that they're not getting it all. And so, for instance, if you're going to give $5 to each collector who comes during the day, and you figure there'll be 15 people coming, so maybe you take $100 and you break it into $25 bills, and you put 2 of the $5 bills in one pocket and the other 18 in another. So when a person comes, often more than one person comes together. A car will come with a few people. Sometimes people come for an institution. Boys will come for representing the yeshiva or some other cause. In that case, you might either write a check or give a gift that is going for all of them. Not each person is collecting in that situation. But sometimes you'll get individuals that come together, older men who will come together with a car, and each one of them will want something. You have to keep in mind what your limitations are, and at the same time know that it's a mitzvah on this day to give. So we've covered hearing the Megillah twice. We've covered the fast of Esther. We've covered Maxis HaShekel, that was the first thing. Then the fast of Esther, then the night Megillah reading, then breaking the fast, then the day Megillah reading, then matanos levoyim, which is giving to the poor. Now, there's a number of ways to formally give to the poor. Right? Probably in your shul, the rabbi will have a fund for that purpose, and it's important that it be given on that day. So you could arrange with your rabbi probably to give him some money to be given on Purim to those who need.
Yeah, Chabad is doing that.
Yeah, most shuls do that, right? So, for instance, if you want to take care of that issue in advance, you could do it that way. You could tomorrow give him X number of dollars, right, and say, please take care of this for me, but only on Purim itself. Right? And he becomes your agent to do it for you at that point. Matanos levoyim you can't do, shalach manot, gifts of food, are not considered to be a shalach manot unless they're given during the day of Purim. So if you had a list of, say, 10 people you were going to give it to, right? It's best to give all 10 sometime during the day, before Mincha and probably after Shacharis. Right? but that means mapping out a delivery route, right? Which you may want to do. You can give 8 of them if you want today, tomorrow, the night before, after mincha, as long as you give 2 of them during the day, right? And then you fulfill them, right? You don't have to give more than 2, by the way. 2 you need to give.
Debbie is preparing them as we speak.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. So, we keep a list year to year. It changes slightly, year to year. And then for me, I have to map out a route, which is going north, then south, and then downtown, that everything gets done. And in my case, I try very hard to finish. Matalas Lavoyim is not too hard to do because I can make arrangements with the rabbi in my shul, or in my neighborhood there are people who come to the door collecting, and I can fulfill it that way. And this is a time of year when people who collect on Purim work very long hours. They'll start before dawn.
Early.
Going to places, going to shuls at the earliest meetings they can to collect, because everybody gives with an open hand on Purim. It's the nature. And if you're a collector, that's the day that, it's the big day of the year. If the first day of Pesach is a big day for matzah, Purim is a big day for tzedakah. Even if you see a guy on the street who's begging, you should give him something. And that's absolutely in that situation. By the time mincha comes, right?
This is the Thursday we're talking about.
This is Thursday. By the time mincha comes, right? Hopefully you've heard the Megillah twice, you've given to the poor, and you've given 2 gifts of food, right? Which sounds like not much, but it is a project in itself, right? The person you're giving to might not be home, right? You can leave it for the person if they're not home. Hang it on their door if they're not home. Because that person, it's not unusual for me to be driving this way and see somebody driving this way. Yeah. That I'm going to his house and he's leaving his house, and I wait, let's go like that, right? And you'll see people doing this all the time, right? Roll into them, give him this gift, right? And he says, "Wait a second," right? And he reaches the back of the hand and says, "This is for you," right? Gives you your gift, right? So it happens, right? But hopefully that is done by the time mincha comes, right? And mincha is a time when the party really begins, right? So you daven mincha someplace, right? A lot of shuls have major Purim events that night, right? And I usually go by my Rav on that day. So what I do is I work my way south, because I live north in Toronto. I work my way south, finishing my deliveries of Shalach Manot, and my last delivery is to my Rav. And I arrive there just after mincha. Sometimes I daven mincha there. And then it's a moment of relaxation. It's nice and it's peaceful. And we begin the dinner. It's always a wonderful, very special dinner with his family. I look forward to it all year long with his family. And then, and it's a very simcha event, but it's really only the warm-up. Because usually around just as dessert is coming out, or just after dessert is coming out, and we've been having moderate amounts of wine, right? And I should add that the mitzvah of drinking, Adol Yoda, this mitzvah is a mitzvah that is intended. It says that you should become so inebriated that you don't know whether to bless Haman and curse Mordechai, which people take to mean that you're stinking drunk. It's absolutely not true. It's a complex thought process that you can have of understanding what that means. Some people do it in a nap. In a nap, you can't tell the difference between the two. There are some people who don't drink and can't drink, and it's best that they don't. There are some people who drink too much, and it's best that they not make a fool of themselves. It's not appropriate to act in a way it's appropriate to get drunk enough, tipsy enough to feel very good, to be a happy drunk, so to speak. Of course, driving is forbidden if you're inebriated. It reminds me of a story that I was told a year ago about a fellow who was devoting his time to university students. And the university students, he would set up at different frum homes, religious homes, and they would enjoy a Shabbos in those homes. And it was their introduction to Yiddishkeit for people who hadn't really been exposed to it. And one day he sent this fellow to a home. We'll call them the Levines. And the Levines were famous because they enjoyed l'chaim very much. They enjoyed good wines, they enjoyed fine liquors, single malts, whatever. And they truly, from the beginning of Shabbos to the end of Shabbos, was a very simchadik time. And not uncontrollable, but simchadik. A lot of joy. And it revolved around a lot of l'chaims. And when the boy got back to university, on Monday, the individual said, "So, how was your Shabbos, the Levines?" He said, "It was excellent. I had a great time. They really, know how to enjoy. A college guy enjoys his drink, right?" And he said, "Did you learn anything?" He said, "I didn't learn much, but I did learn why it is Jews are forbidden to drive on Shabbos." So we're not forbidden to drive on Purim, but we're forbidden to drive when we're endangering ourselves or others. So obviously this is one of the things that a person should plan for in advance. It's very important. It is appropriate to drink, and it's appropriate to feel the effects of the drink. Wine is really the drink of the day. It's not hard liquor. And it should be a time of really caring about the people around you. It's an opportunity. Drinking sometimes lowers inhibitions, and I think that it can lower inhibitions in a good way, where you can express how caring you feel about a person in a way that doesn't embarrass anybody. It's not a bad time for that. They say that when the wine goes in, that the truth comes out.
Yeah.
Right? It should be all good truths that we have at that time. So there's good food, there's good drinking, there's a lot of partying, a lot of singing. And in my case, at around 8:30, my Rav is a Rosh Yeshiva, so the entire yeshiva arrives at that time. The boys have been going from house to house all over Toronto, all over the city in Thornhill, collecting money for good causes. Right? By the way, not usually for the yeshiva itself. The Rav feels strongly this is the time to collect for those people who need to eat, who need the very basics, because that is the nature of Matanas L'Mayim. Right? And by the way, when I get to his house, if I have money left over, remember we talked about an example of saying, I think I'm going to end up giving out to 15 people, let's say $5 each. Right? Turns out that I gave to 12 people because I didn't see the others. Right? So now I'm sitting with $80 in my pocket, which I really intended to have from a Matanas L'Mayim. That money I shouldn't keep. It should really go to that purpose. And the good news is my Rav also takes care of distributing money. So whatever money I have left from that package, I usually just turn over to him right at the beginning, and then he can distribute that as well on Purim, while Purim is still going on. Very often people come to his house collecting during that time. That's part of the festivities. They should eat and drink with us as well as collect. And the boys come, and it's a tremendously sympathetic, merry time with the entire yeshiva in his living room with his family, and everybody's having a very good time. And I look forward to it all year long. And then before you go to sleep, it's still Purim. We're still a Jew, which means that we still have Mariv to do. Mariv, you're forbidden to daven. You're forbidden to daven at all when you're drunk.
That's a good. Right. What do you do then?
So it means that you have to, if you're drinking, you have to plan before you start drinking. I'm going to daven Mariv at 9 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, right? I have to stop drinking, and I have to eat some food in time to get the alcohol out of my system, so that when I address the Rabbanu Shalom, the master of the worlds, I don't do it in an appropriate state. You know, we know the story of Nadav and Avihu, right? You know, the two sons of Aaron, right, who brought strange fire to the Mishkan. We don't want to bring strange prayers to God. We want to come to God in the same way, maybe a little more joyful than we normally do, because we're celebrating this victory over Amalek, you know, and the final victory should come soon. But certainly, when we get to shul, we're going to be saying Shema, we're going to be saying Shema Esrei. It should be done respectfully. And that pretty well is the end of Purim. Unless you live in a city that was a walled city at the time that Joshua attacked and destroyed Jericho. So Toronto, which by the way was a walled city at one time, doesn't qualify because it was a walled city much later. Right? But the place where this is always kept is in Jerusalem. Right? So it's called Shushan Purim, because if you read the Megillah, you'll hear that these events happened on one day, and the following day, these things happened in Shushan, the capital. Right? So Shushan Purim is kept usually in Jerusalem, right, which is a walled city and has been a walled city for a very long time. Right? And all of these laws take effect the following day in Jerusalem. So if you're living, say, in Efrat, right, you could actually have two Purims.
Yeah, you
right?
just go
You could
down
enjoy
there.
the second set of parties,
Yeah.
you know, by going, you know, a 20-minute drive into Jerusalem and celebrating Shushan Purim with the Jerusalemites, right? We don't celebrate it, but we should know that it's a day that continues to have some very good news to it, right? And that's really the nature of how the whole day flows. Right? Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. For myself, on Thursday morning, we will go to Chakras. You said that they would read the Megillas Esther at Chakras.
Yeah.
Okay, but in my case, should I come to your house to?
So yeah, so you would, if
not
you
go to Chakras, or
no,
should go?
No, you should go to.
But I would hear that it would be 3 times by the time I hear your.
No, you don't have to hear Megillah there.
Okay, right? All right.
So you need the time. Believe me, you don't have time to hear Megillah 3 times.
Yeah.
Right. So you would, let's say Chakras there is at say 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right? So Chakras will end. We'll get to Megillah reading probably around 7:45.
Yeah.
So depending on the pace and how things go. 7:45. At that point, before Megillah reading and the brachas of Megillah, right? You'll finish your Chakras. You'll say Aleinu, right, and leave, right, and then you'll hear Megillah. Come to us with your family.
Yeah.
You'll hear Megillah at our house at that point.
At what time?
So, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, yeah.
Okay.
So from your point of view, in terms of any thought process you have, you may want to be thinking who it is you want to deliver Shalach Manot to between my house, between your house and my house.
Your house.
Right,
yeah,
because there may be some people...
My mom's house. I would give to my mom, but we're going to be delivering to up further south from you, to Debbie's brother and other people in that area.
Right, so after you leave us, you can...
But I have to drop yours off and go...
Right, so you can figure that out, and the other thing is that you can ask people to deliver on your behalf. For instance, I used to struggled to get to Rabbi Skobek's house, right? It was an important shalach manot for me to give, but he was always driving around when I was driving over, so I never got to see him. And then I found out he always makes a stop at the Hex, Rabbi Hex, right? So when we go to Rabbi Hex, right, we deliver one for the Heck family and also ask them to hold us for the Skobeks, right? So, because the Skobeks always come there.
I got an email from Rabbi Heck for Nishma. He has an open house.
That's right. That's right. Actually, that's right. After our reading, you can go across the street for a few minutes to his open house as well. It's a nice thing to do. Yeah. He may very well come to our Megillah reading as well.
That's good, yeah.
Because his wife did in the past, and he comes to help us to check the reading, I think.
Yeah.
This year with Moshe. So that's pretty well the way it plays out. People often spend a lot more money on Shalach Manot than they do on Matanos Avoyim. And it's probably you shouldn't do that. You probably should. It's nice to give gifts to your friends. It's part of the idea of Achzus, of unity, of the Jews together, that they're feeding each other, they're caring for each other. But giving to the poor is very important. And if a person ends up spending, say, $2,000, $3,000 on Shalach Manot, which people sometimes do,
wow,
and they spend $500 on gifts to the poor, Matanos Avoyim, it seems to me, my own opinion is that that's skewed a bit, and it would be better if it was, the friends, I think, everybody would appreciate it more if each individual who had got less, and people who were in need got more at the end of the day. So it's something just in the back of your head.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things I started to say, which is I wanted to emphasize, was that earlier I had said that we should remember the Purim story as about an evil prime minister of Persia, which is today Iran, whose goal is to destroy the Jewish people. So there's a concept that it's forbidden to read the Megillah backwards, right? That is to say, one should not start at the last chapter and work to the first chapter. You must start at the beginning and go to the end, right? That is the pshat. That's a simple understanding of it. Rabbi Yitzchak and Berdichev like to say that what that means is, should you think that you are reading about a Persian king of long ago, a dictator who wanted to destroy the Jewish people, and we had a victory over him, you're terribly mistaken. Because it is a story that is both in the past and current, and you should read it not from the past, from the back to the front, but read it from the front to the back, and you will see how much it applies. It's a letter written to you individually. Letters are always written to individuals. It's a letter that Esther and Mordechai wrote to you personally. And I can't think of a time that has greater application to literally to the story.
Oh yeah. We got another Persian going crazy around.
And Mordechai and Esther should make clear who they are with us today, and that they should defeat the Hamans of today. And part of the nature of Purim is that we say that on Purim, at Matan Torah, at the gift of Torah at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, we know that there was an element, one of the elements of receiving it was under duress. It's the famous Medrash that God held the mountain over the Jewish people and said, if you want to accept this, fine, good. If not, I'll drop the mountain, you'll be buried here. Right? It's a kind of curious Medrash and a little hard to understand, because we had already said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. We'd agreed. Some say that because we were, God's glory was unveiled to us, that we were in the very presence of the power and the light of God, that we had no choice, that our free will to say, no, this is not for me, was removed, right? And so we felt like the mountain was over our head, right? But it was just that, how could you say no? at that moment, right? So we didn't. But it says that on Purim, right? On Purim, if there was any question, on Purim we accepted willingly and 100% the Torah from God. Should it be that anybody, any Jew, since that time has stepped back from that acceptance, Purim is a time for us to re-accept with greater vigor and to know that God is watching us, and that we do have Hamans in our own time, and that we should see them defeated, and that we should have a greater acceptance of Torah and God's law and God's rule of the universe. Because it really represents the ultimate contest of those who believe that there is a sense to the world, that there is a creator. I think the term that's often used today that people don't want to use is the name of God. They say intelligent design. That somehow it's not coincidence. Right? The people who believe that somehow it is not coincidence is us. We know that not a blade of grass grows without God willing it to grow. We know that this table right here, that God wills it to exist moment to moment. He didn't will it to exist 20 years ago when it was created and drawn out of a plastics factory. At this moment, God wills it to exist, and the moment He doesn't, it all goes back to tohu vavohu. It goes back to nothingness, to primordial soup, so to speak, or less. We understand that this is hashgacha pratis. This is God running the world, both in the minute sense, the macro and the micro sense. There are many who don't hold that. There are many who hold it's happenstance. We don't believe that. We believe it's connections. It doesn't mean we always understand them. A God who we understand is too small a God for us, right? But we understand that there is a reason to this that we may not always fathom, but it is there. Purim is a day that is the contest between those who believe there is a rhyme and a reason based on God running the world, and those who believe it's just happenstance and coincidence. We should reinforce that belief on Purim. It's very important to do it, and we should see that happen. We shouldn't believe that what goes on amongst our enemies is something we don't have impact on. Our prayers have impact on it. Our desires to do the will of God do it. One of the reasons it says that Esther invited Haman to the party in this Purim story twice. It gives a couple of different reasons. Gemara does. One of the reasons it gives is that God should see what she is going through. Right? I'm sitting here eating with these two evil people, serving them. Right? I'm doing it so that you should save us. Look what I'm being put through. Right? Another reason she did it was that the Jewish people might think to themselves, our sister is the queen. We don't have anything to worry about. The evil guy is prime minister, but we got the queen on our side. And she said, when they find out that I've invited Haman to the party, the Jews find out, they're going to think I betrayed them. That's okay. Because then they will know that everything they do is not dependent on Esther, on me. It's dependent on God. And they will pray with greater and greater intensity because they think I'm not on their side anymore. Right? So it can be known that I invited Haman. There's a whole list of different reasons. But there's an idea in Purim of rededication, of determination that, we will do the will of God and we will be partners with God in creation and in the running of the world. And
that's essentially the acceptance of the Torah, then. That whole thing that they were willing to fast and all that's essentially it, right? The
whole Purim is a process of saying, now if there's any question of duress before, now it's not duress. This is what we want to do, right? This is what we want to do. And they continued to have that view after the death of Haman. It wasn't just as a result of their own struggle at that moment. They continued with that. So that's the story of it, and that's really the significance of it. And that significance involves a number of things, right? And we see it in the mitzvahs, right? The idea of matanos levoyim means to say, of gifts of food, right? Is to say, who do you give gifts of food to? You give it to your family. That's who you give it to. We should know, right, that everybody is potentially our family, right? Every Jew, right? That matanos, shalach manon is a statement that I'm dining with you, right? This is food for you to eat, right? It can be food from my table. Right? It's food that I'm sharing with you. I'm dining with you, right? You know, matanos levoyim, right? The gifts to the poor, is to say it doesn't matter who you are at this moment, right? God is somebody who gives. God gave us victory at this time, right? We need to care for those less fortunate than ourselves, right? And this is a time when we will make sure that we do it properly. And it's a time of our gratitude. And one of the ways of expressing gratitude, you know, Abraham Lincoln said, God must have loved the poor dearly, he made so many of them. Right? It's a time for us that there's an idea that charity does more for the giver than for the receiver. Right? This is an opportunity for us to be a giver with an open hand. At Hanukkah, the goal of the Greeks was not to destroy us, but to make us one of them, to strip our soul, our neshama from us. Right? And so our celebration of Hanukkah has to do with oil, with the light, right? The light which we often identify with the soul. Right? But the nature of the Purim event, right, was that Haman was not interested in stripping from us our spiritual selves. He wanted us dead, every Jew dead, right? The Jews lived within Persia, the great Persian Empire, 127 provinces. Right? So if he was instructing the people to kill all the Jews in the empire, that was literally killing all the Jews. Right? So physically killing them. So how do we celebrate it? How do we say no to Haman? We drink and we feast and we have the joys of the body, right? Because it's the body that he wanted to kill. It's that body continues to celebrate while he hangs on the gallows. Mm-hmm. There's an idea that a tzaddik shouldn't have to take time away from his learning to earn his living. And we know this is a prime example of it. That Mordechai, who is condemned to be killed on a gallows, a huge gallows that Haman had built, we had a reversal complete, and Haman himself was hung on it, and more than that, all of the wealth of Haman, who was the wealthiest man in the Persian Empire at the time, went to Mordechai. So Mordechai, could continue his learning, continue his administration, right, and not focus on, how do I pay the gas bill this week?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm okay, right? So this is another idea built into it, is that Hashem will take care of those that need to do a public service. That we should feel that way. One of the things to have in mind about the Megillah, first of all, you should read it in a language you're familiar with prior to the Megillah reading itself, so that you're very familiar with it.
You should be reading along in English while they're doing it in Hebrew?
It's better to follow in the Hebrew if you can,
okay,
even if you don't understand the Hebrew. Mm-hmm. But you should have read it and learned it in English before, if English is your native language, so that you know the story. You'll hear words, that Zeresh, Haman, Bigsan, whatever, and you'll know, oh, okay, I know what's going on here, right? So read it, learn it in English beforehand, and then follow in Hebrew if you can. But when you're learning it in English, you should know, I think, a very, very interesting thing. And that was when this book was written, right? We know it was written a long time ago. But it was read for the first time a year after the events.
The first, the actual events, and then 1 year later they read it?
They wrote the book.
Wrote the book. Yeah.
And then it was read publicly, the letter. It was read publicly throughout the empire. Next year, at Purim time, Adar. So what was going on then? Right? The prime minister was Mordechai. The queen regent, the queen of all of Persia, was Esther Hamalka. Right? And the emperor was Achashverosh. So when you read the story, you should know, for instance, Achashverosh is also hearing the story.
Yeah, he would hear it too, yeah.
And everything he reads is about his queen and his prime minister. And also about the queen that he killed before.
Yeah,
and also about the prime minister that he did away with, right? So Esther and Mordechai wrote this story knowing that Achashverosh would read the story and know the story.
That's an interesting point, yeah.
So it means that everything in the story is written in such a way, well, first of all, not to do any significant damage to the Jewish people as a result of an example, just one small example. Right? Esther was taken to the house of the king. We understand that she was forcibly taken. It wasn't her desire to go and find herself in this guy's. First of all, he'd killed his previous wife.
Yeah.
Right? In a drunken rage.
And he wanted her to do not nice a dance for men.
Whatever. But why would a nice Jewish girl want to find herself in these conditions, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's a whole separate conversation. But we're told that she was taken. Right? But that, let's say you're preparing a very special event for your wife. And she doesn't know it, and it's a surprise. And there's a knock on the door, right? And there's a limousine driver in full, beautiful livery, nice uniform. And says, "Madam, your husband has instructed me to bring you to the opera this evening. You'll be there. Please, the Rolls Royce is waiting for you." Right? And he walks her to the Rolls Royce. What's her? When Achashverosh hears that she's taken to him, right? It could mean that she's escorted. The way he reads the document.
Yeah.
The way the Yidden read it was that she was forced to. Right? And you see these things throughout the Megillah of it. There are many questions Megillah raises. Maybe in our next meeting we'll talk more detail about
I never thought of it. So
the Megillah itself.
They read it the next year, and he's still in command.
She's the queen.
She's the queen, and he's still the leader.
He's the emperor, and
so he would be reading this document that they wrote.
And the prime minister is Mordechai, right? So
that's interesting. Yeah, his point of view. What would his point of view be?
So when you read the Megillah,
look at it from that perspective, right?
Have in mind that reading it, that it was not a historical document.
Yeah.
It was the news of the day.
News of the day.
In the sense that, okay, I guess you all want to know what happened last year.
Yeah.
How we ended up with her queen and him prime minister, and what happened to Haman. You were wondering?
You're reading
come to shul, and you'll find out, and this story, right, was not a secret.
Wow.
It wasn't like, by the way, this is what happened. It was publicly read, and the larger the crowd that heard it, the better it was, right? We hold that it's good for a good-sized community to hear it. It was not a secret from Achashverosh. It was not a secret from the court.
Wow.
It means that Esther and Mordechai, when they wrote it with this in mind, right? And when you read it, you can see the tremendous sensitivity, the nuance to all of it. In terms of, Achashverosh in the story is not portrayed as an evil person.
Yeah.
We may say that he portrayed as not a very bright person, but not if he reads it. For instance, if he reads it, we see that he is not simply a king who had inherited his throne. He's a self-made man.
He's a self-made man. Yeah, that's right.
Self-made man.
Yeah, he took
right?
it.
He moved the capital from here to here. He built his own throne. If you read the nuances of the story of Vashti, you see that he had regrets, and he didn't want her to be killed. But he had to follow the proper judicial process. And he could have taken her to two courts. One court would have been a court called national security, and one we'll call a family court. In the court of national security, the issue is, has Vashti damaged the dignity of the throne? In the court of family practice, the question is she being a good wife? In the first court, she has to be killed publicly. In the second court, they have to find a way. They have to negotiate. They have to, get mediators, learn how to have special time together. They should be good. What's bothering you? They have to work through their own therapies. He chose to go to the second court, thinking, I'll keep it on that level. But waiting in the second court was the seventh minister, and it was listed, the judges, the ministers of it, Memuchan. Memuchan means he was ready. Memuchan was another name for Haman. It's him. It's him. And so when he came to the court and said, I didn't ask her to come even. I sent a minister. I sent ministers to come. She was insulted. He's saying, if I wanted her to come, I should have gone myself and asked her. It would have been the right thing to do. I was a little bit out of line myself. Right? He's making an excuse for her. But Memuchan says, no, this is national security. And if you let her get away with this, every man in the empire will find themselves having to deal with wives that are lording it over them. Now, what's interesting about this is that there are two characters in the story clearly who are struggling with their wives, right? One of them is Achashverosh and Vashti. The other is Haman. Achashverosh, the stable boy who married the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, right? Vashti, right? And the hairdresser who became prime minister, who's married to Zeresh. Zeresh herself, it seems clear, is a powerful Persian woman. And she seems to be in control of Haman to a very large degree. So they shared this in common. Now, what's interesting about it is that after Vashti is killed, a letter is sent to the 127 provinces. This is a theme in the story. A number of letters are sent out. The last letter, by the way, is the Megillah itself that's mentioned. And people in the far reaches of the empire get a letter read to them, right? It says, the emperor says that every man must rule in his own home. Okay. Right? And the language that he speaks should be the language of the house. Now you have to understand the reaction people have to this. If they all got letters that said, in every house it's important that you have 10 fingers, it would have meant the same thing. Yeah. Every man, and we're talking about, the world that was very much, for better or for worse, a world in which men ruled. Yeah. And the idea that women ruled their houses was a bizarre idea, right? So when Achashverosh sent out this letter, Haman Achashverosh sent it out, people reading it thought, does the emperor have a screw loose? In my home, people speak my language. Right? And if my wife has something that she wants to do, she discusses it with me first. It's the normal thing. Why would you send out a letter that says you have to do the normal thing? Right? And it made people in the empire think, maybe our emperor's...
He's touched.
So that when they started to send out other letters like, okay, on this day we're going to destroy all the Jews, right? There was a question of credibility. Right? Because this is the same guy who sent out the letter about my wife.
Yeah.
So what's he now doing? What's going on? So, but the one thing we see throughout the story, and it's one of the themes of the story, is that whatever it is that Haman plans reverses itself with him, right? Some of them are extremely obvious, right? Okay, so he builds a gallows for Mordecai, he's hung on the gallows. He goes to the emperor to be rewarded. He ends up bleeding Mordecai, who's dressed in the king's best clothes. And his daughter, who thinks that it's Haman that's on the horse and Mordecai leading it, dumps the chamber pot on her father's head, filled with feces and feathers, right? And then she herself will kill herself later on as a result of having shamed her. It's a story in which whatever it is that Haman has planned will come back and bite him.
Right? I think you get the picture, right?
Well, this is the point that's often made is Zeresh understood this. His wife understood this, and she said to him, if Mordecai has turned the tables on you, it's the beginning of the end. If he's moving up, you're finished. She seemed to understand. Whether she understood completely the idea of Hashgacha Protis, that God runs the world, or she understood that the Jews have a connection. We don't understand it, but they have a connection. And if things start to go in their way, then there's no stopping it. Right? The evil people in this world should know that. And the good people should know that, and the Jews should act the way Jews are supposed to act, so that these problems can be solved by the Ribono Shel Olam, and that the Hamans of this world, both outside and within us, can be destroyed once and for all.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Say that again. The Hamans can be destroyed once and for all.
Amen.
Amen.